What's going on, everybody? We are back. Game 7 in the books. Celtics fall for a second time in a row, this time to the longtime rival Philadelphia 76ers, 106-103. I think we start with the three ball tonight. The Celtics shot 31% on 47 attempts. If you're here after every post game, you know me. I'm for keeping the offense dynamic, scoring on all three levels, and that's just not what they even tried to do tonight. But on the other hand, I'm here for good threes. I'm here for the team generating good looks, but the Celtics just have struggled to do that consistently so far. And just because it's an open three doesn't always mean it's a good three. I think how you generate that shot matters a lot. And we saw that tonight. I don't know how many of the threes they took were considered open, but they weren't falling, and I think that's because how they generated them wasn't pretty. There was no energy behind the ball. It was all one pass, high ball screens, ISO sidestep. There was no swing, drive, kick, none of that. The Celtics come into the game tonight, bottom third in the league in total passes. I think that's something that has to change. The assist number has to tick up, and in turn, I think they'll help some of these open looks fall. Another thing I wasn't fond of tonight was the Jays' aggression. I know Tatum had 15 boards. That just doesn't happen by accident, but more so on the offensive end. I think Tatum kind of got away from what he's been doing the previous 6 games. I didn't see him in the mid-range, taking advantage of smaller guys or relentlessly attacking the rim. And listen, I understand Embiid's an elite defender. He's an elite rim protector. He's an elite defensive presence. But in a game where the threes aren't falling, the Jays cannot combine for 5 free throws. And let's hit on JB real quick. He had a stinker, 4 for 13, 11 points, threw the ball away 4 times. A couple were super unforced. And I'm not going to hit on him too hard. I think social media already goes too far with that. What I will say is, I think Jaylen Brown needs to do less, and by doing less, he does more. You know, he gets caught up in doing too much sometimes, but with the talent around him, he doesn't need to do that anymore. He could just do what he's good at, and he can excel in that role. And I hope to see him do that going forward. And I feel like I didn't see a lot of people talk about it, but how ugly was that third quarter of basketball? And you know what? You know what that made me think of for the first time this season? And I'm not saying I regret any of the moves we made, but in this game in particular, the third quarter, I said, wow, this would be a perfect game for Marcus Smart, and believe it or not, yes, Grant Williams. The game got disgusting, and nobody played ugly, and no matter what anybody thinks about Smart, or even Grant, when the games got mucky, sometimes, or often for Smart, he was able to capitalize. And I'm not saying I'd take back any of the moves this team made in the offseason. Definitely not saying that at all. But a quarter like that is bound to happen again, and you're just going to need to someone step up, and I don't know who that necessarily is. Drew and Derek do it, but just in a different way. So I'm curious to see that situation going forward. And guys, keep in mind, I record these right after the game is over. And also, it's the beginning of the year. So those two things combined, just kind of a recipe for overreacting. So just take everything I say with a little bit of, give it some leeway. One more little negative thing, and then we'll transition into some positive takeaways. So we'll talk about KP. KP, as I've been saying, I want to see him against these elite, versatile centers. We saw him against Bam, didn't go too well on the defensive end. Saw him against Rudy Gobert, didn't go too well on the defensive end. And now tonight against Embiid, when they were matched up, it didn't go too great. But I don't think this is a night in, night out problem with Porzingis. I think it's just an issue with these top tier centers. And occasionally against the elite of the elite, you might be able to overlook it because what he gives up on one end, he makes up for on the other. And that's just what he did tonight. He had that stretch there where he scored about 12 straight for this team, got to the line in key moments, and then did his work against smaller guys like he always does. And to be truthful, I think they need to run the offense through him more. There are a handful of times through every single game where he's just not involved, he's out of the action, or he has a mismatch and nobody looks his way. And I know earlier I talked about less threes or taking better looks, but Kristaps in particular, this game, it felt like the first half needed his 3-ball more. I think after every single game I've gotten on here asking for Kristaps to be more involved in the offense. Is this something you guys want too? Am I overrating him? Am I expecting too much? Let me know in the comments what you think. Really quickly on Drew and D. White, we'll start with Drew in particular. I thought it was interesting to see him matched up with Embiid at the start of the game. Drew probably gives up 10 inches in height and 100 pounds, but it was interesting to see him be a pest, bother Embiid a bit. Of course, it's not sustainable long term, but it was just a fun look. And D. White came back tonight. He came back with the double dad strength or just the double dad confidence. He took a bunch of threes. I think he took over 10. If some of those went in, if more of those went in, we would probably be having a different conversation tonight. But it's no big deal. At the end of the day, I like a confident Derek White. I liked his aggression. I like his drives to the rim, finishing through contact. And there's not too much else to say about him. I'm just happy he's back. And Hauser, I think his 3-ball is back. Through the 4 games this month, he shot 22 threes, shooting 56%. and it's good to see Sam out of his slump. And let's do a few quick hits. Post-game press conference, Mazzulla had that strange interaction with the reporter Gary Washburn. From my understanding, I think Washburn was just asking a question about the threes. And in my opinion, Joe had an unprofessional and immature response. Joe was locked and loaded for this question. He had ammo for his response. He'd been waiting for this moment. Joe brought up an article of Washburn's that he recently just read, which is fine. He's in the loop, he's reading the news, but the strange part about it was the article was from 2016. And I guess in 2016, Gary had wrote an article about the C's possibly shooting too many threes back then. And Joe went on to slyly say like, oh, I read your article, it was great by the way, but why have you been obsessing with threes since 7 years ago? You're really ahead of the curve on that one. And again, just kind of giving him a sly, backhanded compliment about his 7-year-old article. Just strange, just an immature, unprofessional response for a leader. You know, a leader, a head coach of an NBA team is doing research on this reporter who's just trying to do his job. Gary wasn't provoking him or trying to get a rise out of him. He was just genuinely asking a question. A little insecure, a strange turn of events because things between the media and Joe have been good this year. Turned a new leaf, but I don't know. We'll see what happens going forward. Not too much in the defense tonight. We'll talk about it real quick. They held Embiid to 27 points and only 6 free throws. They held Maxey to 11 for 27 from the field. If you just looked at that box score, you would think for sure the Celtics came out on top. But again, I don't think the defense was the problem. I think it was more offense related like we talked about earlier. We'll talk about the defense another day. Talk positively about Philly. Am I the only Boston Celtics fan who would do that? I might. I'm impressed with Maxey. He didn't shoot great tonight, but his float game is ridiculous. He was getting up over Kristaps, just no hesitation. Embiid, he's a monster, professional scorer. That late game shot he hit was like, when do you ever see a guy who's like 7 feet, 300 pounds with that footwork, that mid-range fadeaway? Just, I don't know. I can't lie. It's beautiful. And their depth pieces, specifically the ones they got from the Harden trade, Morris, Covington, Batum. We didn't see Morris tonight, but Covington and Batum, I wasn't too high on them as players. I wasn't sure how much they had left in the tank, but seeing them in their minimized roles tonight, they're super minimized roles. I thought they filled it extremely well. If there's any Philly fans at all listening to a pro Celtics show, what do you want to do with those guys? Are those guys you're looking to keep, or do you want those expiring contracts, or do you want to ship them off somewhere? Are you trying to get a third star? Are you trying to get a Levine? Let me know. Let me know in the comments. And I'm going to wrap right there. If you enjoy what I'm doing, like, comment, subscribe. If not, it is no big deal. I upload after every single Celtics game. You'll hear from me Friday, November 10th. First in-season tourney game, Brooklyn Nets. Peace.